Alright, we're going to be doing some word problems here. And they're going to be word problems that require us to solve quadratic equations. So we've seen similar word problems earlier in the book, but because we're going to be doing the product of two consecutive integers now, it's going to make things a little different. So I think I'm just going to use my own notation here. Alright, so two consecutive integers. Do you remember how that worked? We can build one off of the other. So the first one is I don't know. Well, if they're in a row, do you remember that that would make the next one number larger? So x and x plus 1. So here's my dictionary. Now this time it's the product. So I'm multiplying that first one times the second one. And they tell me that those two, when they multiply together, is 132. And is my equal. Okay, now this is a different kind of word problem. We haven't seen something like this before. So I'm going to FOIL this out. I'm going to get x squared plus x equals 132. Okay, now the only way we know how to do this, we have to get this to be equal to 0. So I'm going to swing the 132 to the other side. Okay, now let me actually... Okay, I wanted to see where we were at here. So we need now to find two numbers that multiply to get 132 and add together to get 12. We're going to factor this, and we're going to use the zero product property. And so, hold on, let me do it by a trick here. So you've seen me do this before. I'm going to break this number down into its parts. Okay. Now, I don't offhand know what these two numbers would be, but it's got to be some combination of the numbers that are here. So if I lasso them in different arrangements, now I do know that one of them will have to be a positive number and one will be a negative. So I have broken it down into its prime factorization, and I have an interesting combination of numbers here. 3 times 2, that would be 6, times another 2, that would be 12. So right off the bat I found it, even though I did not know what this would be. So I need them to add up to be positive 1. So here's what I'm going to choose. Oh, well, my two numbers are going to be positive 12 and negative 11. Now I thought this was an AC method type, but it's not. So if we're factoring something like this, it's plus 12 and minus 11. Okay, now remember the zero product property? Either one of these could be causing it to equal 0. So my two values are x are negative 12 and x is 11. Now on quadratic problems you'll often see this, that there are two solutions. So the possibilities, I'm going to put them both back into my dictionary. If the first one happens to be negative 12, then the next one is one more than that, it would be negative 11. Or the first one could be 11, and if that's the case, the next one would be positive 12. So it can happen two different ways. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm going to have my first number and my second. Now the dictionary for consecutive integers is always going to be the same. It's going to be x and x plus 1. We are multiplying these two guys together, and it tells us it is 240. So I'm going to FOIL this out. I get x squared plus x equals 240. Now I need this to be 0. I can't solve it, so I'm going to send the 240 to the other side. He becomes a negative. Okay, now I need two numbers again that make negative 240 and add together to get positive 1. So I'm going to do my trick again, see if I can come up with something. Well, let's do it like this. So I'm just breaking it down to its prime factorization. And I've got 2 and 12. Okay, this has a lot of combinations. So, but I know it's going to be two numbers close together. Let me see. So here are my prime factors. And so I could arrange these in two groups to come up with something. Let's see. 10, 4, 8. Yeah, so I'm just going through my mind of the different combinations. Here's what I came up with. If I put the 3 and 5 together, that gets me 15. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. So I'm going to make this positive 16 and negative 15. Okay, so I've got positive 16 and negative 15. Okay, zero product property lets us just solve that. I get x is negative 16 or x is 15. So we go back to our dictionary, and there's two options because this is quadratic. So we got negative 16 for the first one, or 15. I'm just going to put them both up there. If it happens to be negative 16, one more than negative 16 is negative 15. And if it happens to be 15, the second one will be 16. Okay, really recommend you pause and try it. I think the factoring is probably the hardest part of this. But I'm going to get started. Okay, the dictionary for consecutive integers is always going to be the same. So I've got x times x plus 1 is 420. So I'm distributing that. I get this again. Now I'm going to swing this over. They've all been the same. I'm swinging this over so it equals 0. Okay, I'm back to doing the same thing here. So I don't know them. I know they're going to be two different signs. So I've got 2 and 210. 3 and 70. Okay, now let's see here. So I'm just going through all my different arrangements here. 21. Yeah, I found it. So it's 7 and 3. So I'm just arranging them in different ways. And this looks like it's the 1. 7 and 3 makes 21. Oh. No, what did I do? I thought I had it. Oh yeah, no, I do have it. This makes 20. So I'm going to go with positive 21 and negative 20. So I can just factor it as positive 21 and negative 20. Zero product property lets me do this. There are two possible solutions. Go back to my dictionary. If it's negative 21, then the other one is negative 20. If it turns out it's 20, it's positive 21. Okay, now we're going to vary it up here a little bit. We're going to be working with the area of a rectangle. And they're telling us I've got, I think it's area, isn't it? Yeah. So I've got a width, and the length is 2 more than the width. So if I were doing my dictionary, here's what I've got. The width is I don't know. The length is the width plus 2. So I've got them both built off the same I don't know, which I needed to do. Now area is multiplication again. So I'm going to have w plus 2 times w. So there's my length and my width. My dictionary told me length is w plus 2. Area is 15. So this is the problem I'm going to work. Now it's going to be very much, now they're doing it on the other side, but it's very much the same thing. Distributed it out, moved the negative 15 to the other side, and then they factored. Okay, zero product property gets us down to these two answers. Now here's the problem. This is a width. So it's a width of a garden, so it can't be a negative width. So even though we got two answers again, this one is not valid. We can't have a negative width. So we're going to go with this guy. And if he's the width, we go back to our dictionary. If the one is 3, the other one must be 5. Okay, let me set this one up for us. So I'm going to call the width, I don't know, and I'm going to call the length. We can build the length off of the width. The length is 1 foot more, so I've got x plus 1. So I don't have to do the picture, but this is what I'm looking at. And it's, if you multiply the length times the width, you get the area. So I've got x times x plus 1 equals 30. Okay, this all works just like the other one. That's a plus there. I'm going to go ahead and bring the 30 to the other side. So sorry, this is badly written, as it often is. So I need two numbers that multiply to get negative 30 and add to get 6. They're going to have different signs because it's a negative 30. So my two numbers are x plus 6 and x minus 5. The zero product property lets me do this. Now I have two answers again, which happens with quadratic, but it's negative 6. So these are lengths, so they can't be negative 6. So my answer is 5. And that was my width according to my dictionary. Let's add one more to it, and I get 5 and 6. Okay, I've got a width and I've got a length. All right, this time the width is going to build off the length. So I'm going to make the length I don't know, and they're telling me the width is 3 feet less than the length. Now remember, less than flips it around. So 3 feet less than the length would be this. It's a rectangular patio again. So I am multiplying to get an area. So here's what I'm multiplying. Okay, we'll distribute this through. I get this. Now it equals 180, but I'm bringing it over to this side because I need to be able to set it equal to 0 to use the zero product property and to factor. So once again, I've got negative 180, so it's going to have two numbers with opposite signs. Multiply to get 180, add to get negative 6. So it's possible you see it, but I don't. So I'm going to break it all the way down and hope I can find it quickly. So different arrangements of these prime factors are what I need. So I've got 9, I'm not saying it off the top of my head, 15, oh, I found it. Okay, so sorry for the delay there, 6. All right, so if I arrange it 2 times 3 times 2, that gets me 12, and 3 and 5 gets me 15. So I'll make this guy the negative and he's the positive. So again, two numbers to make negative 180. I found them to be 6, 12, and negative 15. So negative 15 and a positive 12. Zero product property, negative 12, sorry, okay. Once again, these are lengths, so negative 12 doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go back to my dictionary. The length is 15 because that was x. The width is 15 minus 3. It is 12. Now I should be putting units on here. I don't often do that, but there's my units. All right, I'm pretty sure we have just one more type of problem, and I think we're going to be using the Pythagorean theorem. So we've got a right triangle here, and so whenever you have right triangles, they're telling us I've got one side and the other one is 7 feet less than that one, and I have a hypotenuse. So this is going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we saw this again earlier, but we didn't see it with such difficult numbers. So one side is x minus 7 all squared. So I'm going to have to multiply that out. Now let me go back over here. So let me do this. So x squared, now this is the same thing times itself. So you could FOIL it out, but do you remember we also had a section where we saw it was this. Square the first one, square the back one, and the two of these multiplied together is negative 7x. You'd have two of them, so negative 14x plus 49. That's how that multiplies out. Now, they told me that the hypotenuse is 17, so they squared that as well. Now, everything's been multiplied out. Now, let's combine like terms. X squareds are the same kind of thing, so I can make 2x squareds. Okay, one more step. We need this to be 0, so I'm going to send this over to the other side, and that creates this that needs to be resolved. Now this is, oh well, let's see if they did a trick. Yeah. Okay, so what they did here, this would be the AC method if we tried this, but this has a common denominator of, or greatest common factor of a 2. Now if you pull that 2 out, you only have to now try to find how to factor this. So by pulling that out, that's a huge advantage. And now we're trying to just factor down this. Two numbers to make negative 120 and add to get negative 7. Here they are. Now if you remember this from the section on the zero product property, this 2 is never going to equal 0. You can't turn a 2 into a 0, so he's not part of it. Has nothing to do with it. Now I solve the other two. I get x is 15 and x is negative 8, but that doesn't make any sense because it was the side of a triangle. So we've got one of the sides, and if you remember all the way back, it said the other side is 7 less than this one, so the other one must be 8. Okay, so got the same kind of arrangement. We've got a hypotenuse of 13. One of them is x, and the other is 7 more than that other one. So pretty difficult. We're going to use Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to do that. Plus this side squared, the whole side, so it's in parentheses, equals 13 squared. Now you could FOIL this out, but I'm going to do our trick. Square the front, square the back. These two together would be 7x, so it must be 14x. And then I believe this squared is 169, but I don't want to screw it up, so yeah, it is. Okay, so far so good. Now these are the same kind of thing, so I have 2x squareds plus 14x plus 49 equals 169. I need this side though to be 0, so I'm going to subtract 169. Got 2x squared plus 14x minus 120 equals 0. Okay, now we'll do the same trick here. These are all even numbers, so they have a GCF of a 2. Alright, so we can just factor what's in the parentheses, which is really going to help. So I need two numbers to multiply to get negative 60 and add together to get 7. So I know they're going to have opposite signs because it's negative 60. But I'm going to go over here and do 6, 10, 2, and 5. So I'm doing my trick again. It's got to be some arrangement of this. And so I thought I had it, but I don't. Yeah, so it's actually 2 times 3 times 2 gets me 6. It gets me 12. And then if I just, so I'm going to use these three grouped together and just 5 by himself. So that would get me, if I have he'll be the positive and he'll be negative, and that will create a 7 in the middle. So I now have this, x plus 12, x minus 5. 2 is never going to be what's causing this to be 0, so I only have to solve these two. Now, x cannot be a negative number. It's a length, so that doesn't make sense. So one of the sides, this side here, is 5. This one is 5 plus 7 more, so it's 12. And they've given us some units here, so feet. Let me check, yeah. Okay, one more of these. So the same thing again, we got a triangle. I'll give this a shot if you want to try it. I think it'd be a good idea. Okay, now they've changed it here. So they gave us one of the sides is 7. And they're telling us the hypotenuse is one more than this missing side. So the hypotenuse this time is x plus 1. Okay, so they were being tricky, but it's the same. So we've got 7 squared plus x squared is now the hypotenuse squared, which this time is the x plus 1 squared. So I've got 49 plus x squared. Now you could FOIL this out, but I'm going to do the trick. So I've squared the front and the back. Multiply them together, I get 1x, so it must be 2 of those, and I would get this. Oh, this is actually going to be easier. Now I need to get a room to be equal to 0. I could go either way, but I'm going to take the x squared away from this side, and that would take them away from this side. Do you see they're going to drop out? So I have 49 equals 2x plus 1. Now it's actually just an ordinary equation. I don't have, because quadratic fell out of it because the x squareds dropped out, so this is going to be much easier. I'm going to subtract away 1 from each side. I get 48 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2. And I get x is 24. So this missing side is 24. Well, if that's 24, what's the hypotenuse? It's 24 plus 1 more. It's going to be 25. Okay, those aren't easy, but I hope you understood, and I think the hardest part of that is really going to be the factoring. So hopefully you're good at that and can brush off any rust you might have had.